Good afternoon, Carl.
Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We're getting out of spring into early summer, probably a little ways into summer by the time this episode goes live. And a little bit for the personal end, like, look, as fun as it has been in conference season, seeing a lot of the advisor community at probably almost a dozen different conferences over the past 2 months. Looking forward to not getting on an airplane for about 6 weeks and just hanging out and getting caught up for the summer.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, speaking of that, do you, or is there much speaking going on for you in December, January, February?
Some conferences run events in late January into February. A couple of like broker dealers do top advisor events. T3 Tech Conference has been there a lot, but
Okay,
not much in December besides Market Council, and nobody really runs conferences in early January. Too close to
perfect.
New Year's.
Thank you.
So there's like something coming. You'll be highlighting
We, I
in a
think,
future
I think
episode.
we're trying to make a decision as to go. We got a chance to do a house swap in New Zealand, so we're like, well, let's go spend December, January, February in New Zealand. I was like, well, I don't ever speak. I don't think I ever. I went back and looked at my calendar, and
Yeah, not
I don't
probably
typically
not
do much there.
much.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
perfect.
like
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
no. So what we're here to talk about, so got a wonderful inquiry from an advisor. We get a lot of these that mail in to, I guess, either you or I or both of us to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'd like to hear the Kitces and Carl take on it. And I find this one particularly kind of amusing as a submission for reasons that will become evident in a moment. So this is from Luke, first names only. So Luke says, I'm currently in the process of acquiring a portion of an existing older financial advisor. Shout out because he actually used advisor, not
Did he
advisor.
really? You didn't just
He really
insert
did.
that?
He really
Wow.
did.
Okay,
On purpose. He even
this is
wrote
getting
parentheses like,
this is
yes,
getting
I use the
silly.
term.
Yeah, this is getting silly.
No, no, no. So I'm currently in the process of acquiring a portion of existing older financial advisor. I'm essentially buying his C clients, which are kind of like A clients to me, so he can focus more of his time on his A clients. And we're in
Hmm.
the same overarching firm while we're running our individual practices in it. So my concern, my being Luke, my concern going in the transaction is that there's an obvious personality flavor difference of financial advisor that these clients are going to be getting from me. Their current advisor, so the older seller, is very analytical, whereas I am more purpose and relationship focused. And so Luke's request is I'd be interested in hearing a discussion about ways to navigate this.
Mhm.
And I was chuckling when I heard this. So I just read this like, so basically, what would Carl do if he bought Kitsis's clients? Like that's basically what I feel like this comes down to, right? And sorry, what I think is a
Sell them back to you.
no, you got to take them. You got to take them. I'm moving on to other clients I got to serve. You got to take them. Uh, and I feel like
Yeah.
inherent or implied in this, which I think is a fair reflection, is that
Yeah.
the personality of an advisor tends to have some alignment or expectations with the clients, right? At best, that's the style of advisor they're used to working with and showing up with.
Yeah.
At worst maybe from Luke's perspective, well, if that's the kind of advisor they sought out, am I going to have friction if I show up in a different way?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I
love this.
really am curious, Carl, like how would you handle a situation like this?
Yeah. What's interesting is I just had this conversation. We had two advisors, a team come spend a day with me here in the mountains, and we walked around and talked about what they're trying to build. And they were asking this exact question because the advisor that they are working with, that's not the exact question. The advisor they're working with had to handle things a little differently than they do. And so this is a totally common question.
Yeah.
And it's not, just to keep kind of expanding the circle, it's not unlike, you know, people who are changing advisors are used to a certain way. But I think if we keep it really specific, analytical, numbers based, still let's even stay within the planning world. So it's not like oh, used to work with advisor who was performance and investment centric. No, it's still like planning.
Yeah, I'm
It's just
assuming planning, brought more spreadsheets than maybe Luke's
yeah,
preference.
yeah. I think the word that came to mind is carefully and over time. That's how I'd handle it. Like I would greet with deep empathy. I mean, my and this is increasingly true for me. Like I just am so grateful and I don't know what the right word is, deeply um respectful of the work that people do in the world. And so I would be focused on what's the older advisor's name?
We didn't get an older advisor name. Let's
Okay.
call him Michael for the sake of example.
Yes, that's like I would be deeply respectful of the work that Michael had done with his clients and greet those clients with empathy where they are. And over time, the same way I would do it if I got a new client, or the same way I would do it if I was trying to activate somebody that might be like a customer, in the past, and now I want to turn them into a more full client. I'd greet them with empathy where they're at and
So
be deeply so
what does that mean in practice, right? Just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I,
Stop with all the nice platitudes, Richards. Just tell us what it means in practice. I think what I mean by that is um I would probably take the same agenda that they had been having. So let's just take like an annual review or something. I'd probably
yep,
take the same agenda that you had used. I would have just said, "Look, tell me what you've been doing with these clients." And I'd probably take the same agenda, and then at the end of the agenda, I'd just attach a 10-minute conversation. So it'd feel very familiar. I would be, I mean, I think there's another way to do this, and it's more like, you know, shock therapy. And the more that's my personality. I'd much rather just go like, no, we're doing it this way. But I found that it's much nicer to the humans that we serve to just take this over time. So I'd take the same agenda. Here's our annual review you've done. Historically, you'll recognize all this, and I'd go through it. And probably even if you do this successfully, you're often doing it with Michael the first time, maybe
right.
even, right? And then at the end of that, I would just say, hey, just and this is actually exactly what I would do. I'd go through that. If Michael was in the room, especially, I'd go through that, and I'd have Michael be chiming in a little bit here and there. And we'd probably plan this before, almost like a play. Like we'd think about it kind of carefully, because the goal is to transition them. And then at the end, I would just say, hey, and I would use the fact that you've worked with Michael as my excuse for this conversation. It works perfectly. At the end, I would just say, hey, I know you've been working with Michael for years. And I bet Michael knows the answer to this question, but I don't. And I don't want to make any assumptions. And I actually didn't want to ask Michael. I just wanted to hear it from you. And then I'd ask my favorite question,
Ooh,
my favorite discovery question. And you can insert whichever one you want. But Dan Sullivan, we're meeting 3 years from now. We got Dan Sullins, sort of almost like what brought you in today? How can I help you? Bill Bacharach's work, which I'm a huge fan of. That's probably what I would do. I'd say, hey, we did the normal agenda. At the last item on the agenda, I'd save 7 to 10 minutes for. That's it. And I would just say, I know Michael probably could answer this question, but I didn't want to make any assumptions about it because it's so important. So, Jill and John, you know, why is money important to you? And and I would lean into that conversation, and then at the end of that, I would just say, and they would tell me, time with my family, mainly outside. Oh, write that down. And then I'd say, hey, would it be okay if Michael and I huddled after this meeting, and I looked too at your plan, in air quotes, your plan based on what you just told us, and don't be surprised if this will come up again. And depending on what they told me, I might even be tempted to say, hey, based on wow, that's really interesting, right? Based on what you just said, I can actually see some things we might want to tweak a little bit, just little adjustments we want to make. Can't you, Michael? Oh, yeah, me too. And then it like, hey, give us a couple of weeks to consider this. Or if what they told me was benign enough, like not far off, I I would say, oh, thanks so much for sharing that. That means a lot to me. Um, this is the focus of everything I do. Is it okay if from here on out we use that as the lens or the frame for our conversation? Oh, great. Okay, cool. So don't be surprised. This will come up again. End of meeting. Like no more, no big change, no big dramatic shift, just comfort, continuum, like all of that stuff. That's what I mean by greet with empathy. I don't want to blow their worlds up. There's no reason to. They've been
Right.
happy with what Michael's done. And Michael's done a remarkable job. And we're deeply respectful of that. That's how I'd approach it. What do you think about that?
I like the framing. I just feel like you have a gift for words and how you cue up the conversations. But to me, what I heard, right, just a comfortable way to introduce one of these probing questions, right? I bet Michael knows the answer, but I want to hear it from him. I want to understand it from you directly because it's that important. So, what's important about money to you, or whichever leading discovery
Question. We're
question
not
you
we're
want.
not question zealots here. So whatever question you want.
Yep,
That was
yep.
just an example.
Uh, it may introduce an opportunity to do some planning work or updates. So cool. Now I get to dig in a little bit further and do some planning and bring it back to them if they say something that looks a little bit different than where the plan was. If not, again, I like your framing, this is the focus of what I do. Is it okay if we use this as a lens? Now still there's a part of me that hears this. I'm like, all right, someone's gonna say no.
No, really? Wow. How could let's push on. Tell me, give me an example. Who would ever
Eh,
say no to that? You just told me I don't want to be a burden to the kids and I'd like to leave some to my favorite charity. Or like give me an example of how you could see how you could see this going sideways.
I
Because
guess that's fair. I mean, like that lens. I mean, I'm envisioning the subset of clients that just, you know, are I hate to overgeneralize, just are not into that side of planning, right? Just, I'm a spreadsheet guy and I liked Michael's spreadsheets. That's why I work with Michael because we nerd out over spreadsheets together. What is this like weird, awkward, personal question about what's important to money? What's important about money to you? I guess be fair, like I don't feel you're right. I don't think there's pushback after they give the answer. I think the question is
oh, just
whether
the
someone
question
flinches at the
uncomfortable.
question.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And that again, I think that's why I'm not a question zealot, is that you can tone those questions back. I always think of this on a spectrum, and like deep respect to George Kinder and the work he's done, because and I mean, I think when we talked about this, 15 years ago, it was even more the case of like, wow, how do I do that? That takes real skill and real comfort and frankly inclination and desire to be that kind of an advisor. And so that I put those questions out on a spectrum, and then I tone in a little bit to Bill Bacharach's work, and I tone it, and you can get all the way down to like your favorite question, like if we were meeting for the first, like what brought you in today, right?
Yeah.
We could say let's just pretend like we were meeting for the first time today. You could say this at the end of the meeting. Hey, just a curious question. Like, let's pretend like you and I were meeting for the first time today. What's on the top of your mind right now that maybe we haven't talked about? So you're just introducing some way, wherever you're comfortable,
Yeah.
you're just introducing some way of like, and then let's say you are comfortable with Dan Sullivan's question. Hey, just curious, if we were to meet 3 years from today, you know, a recording day, if we were to meet 3 years from today, June 11th, 2027, and let's say you were really happy with this relationship, what would have happened to make that so? Like that's an okay question even for a spreadsheeter, an engineer. Oh, I love the spreadsheets and performance is really important. And I mean, what you try to be
Yeah.
getting at is like we met some
Hmm.
of our goals. Maybe not crying on the couch and time with my family, but just like we met somewhere. Oh, okay, great. And that's what I'm saying with empathy is that's fine. And you've decided that you may not be able to pull those people all the way to, but now you've got some spot where you're like, okay, this this couple really likes spreadsheets. They want to be able to track things. This is awesome. I've decided I'm okay with that. And so, but you're just trying to get at why. Like, I understand you want to build a really efficient ladder against this wall. Are we sure that's the right wall? To paraphrase Covey, right?
Mhm.
So, and I'm just suggesting maybe rather than being like, I know you've worked with Michael and he has lots of spreadsheets. I do life planning, right? I'm just suggesting
Yeah, yeah.
maybe we could think of this as like a 12 to 36 month series of righteous tricks. And that some people the righteous trick may end with, Jerry, my favorite example, Jerry just saying, man, I don't want to be burned to the kids.
Yeah.
Is that what pushback do you have there?
No, I don't know that I have pushback. I feel like it's still, it's a comfortable way to approach the issue that Luke is raising, which is, how to navigate this difference in styles.
Mhm.
I feel like it doesn't necessarily solve the underlying, so like the underlying implicit fear, which is some of them may not like Luke and his style because that just wasn't what they signed up for.
Yeah.
And even as I hear this, I'm like, I don't know that there is a solution to that. I mean, I candidly, when I hear a situation like this with Luke, my nerdy spreadsheety brain then goes to, well, I wonder how they structured the terms of the agreement and whether there's a contingency on the payment so that if a subset of clients just don't want to come along, you're
Yeah.
not stuck on the hook having like taken on debt or an upfront payment for
Yeah.
clients that decide that they're actually not a fit in this transition, right? So like what have
Yeah.
you done in the terms and the structure of the deal maybe to have the payments be based on revenue that actually comes over, or a portion of the payment up front and then a portion at the 12 or 24 month mark with a contingency on whether a certain percentage of revenue stuck
Yeah.
around, and
Yeah.
just build in some preparedness that there really might be a subset of clients who aren't going to come along.
Yeah, that was so I'd love for you to talk real quickly about what you like, because I remember often those structures were basically like a 3-year earnout, and I'd love for you to talk about what you're seeing. But that I had the same thought was it's going to require adjustment from either the clients or from Luke,
Mhm.
and or probably both. And the question is, does Luke want to make that adjustment? Like, is Luke thinking I'm going to get every client to come all the way over to where I want them, or I'm not going to be happy? Or is Luke saying, hey, you know what? I look, and I
One.
loved that game, the quote unquote game, and I'm using that word very carefully. I love the like, eh, I mean, look, abusive, unprofessional, performance chasing. There were certain things where I was just like, hey, this is not a good fit.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole bunch of room in the middle that's like,
Yep.
that's interesting. I kind of enjoy that chess match, if you will, of like, can I
Yeah.
still serve you in a way that makes you really happy? And maybe just maybe sneak some little things in, you know?
Yeah. The thing that makes me like nervous on behalf of Luke and the Lukes out there in situations like this is, so as I know, me paraphrasing a little bit. I feel like, Carl, part of what you're saying is, hey, Luke, you might have to adapt your natural style a little bit, at least initially, because we've got to give these clients some comfortable transition. And you can start introducing the conversation even at the end of the first meeting in the ways that, Carl, that you highlighted, but that this is probably going to be a transition period where you might have to be a little bit outside of your natural zone and style
Yeah.
while you transition these clients. And on the one hand, to me, that I like, well, yeah, I mean, I could think of a lot of situations where business change was happening and stuff was going on. Like, okay, I got to get stretched a little outside my comfort zone for a while,
Yeah.
but only because it's for a while.
Yeah.
And the part that I get nervous about in hearing situations like Luke's is, unless I, did this whole transaction for a fixed upfront payment, and now I really have to keep them because I need like the revenue from them to pay the notes that I took on because I did this as a as a purchase acquisition, and I lose the flexibility to make the call that some of these clients just really might not be a good fit. Maybe they were a little too Michael and not enough Carl, or not enough Luke. And that I worry for people in situations like Luke's. Be careful that you structure a deal in a manner that allows you to decide some of these clients really aren't a good fit, and that you're not stuck with them. And Luke says they're at a similar overarching financial advisory firm. I'm not sure if that, if that's a framing to a broker dealer. In a lot of the BD world, these types of transitions are done with split rep codes as percentages of revenue. And so if someone's not really fitting, you just give the client back, you give the rep code back, you give the revenue back if it's not fitting. For other deals that have more of an upfront, it's been common for a couple of years now that you might have a payment that is 60 or 70% upfront, 30% on a contingency that at least 90% of revenue has stuck around after 12 or 24 months. Adjust levers as you wish about the percentage and the time period, but something to that effect. So that on the one hand, if you make a good faith effort to get some clients that don't come along because they just don't want to be transitioned, you haven't paid for revenue that doesn't stick. But it also helps in situations if there are some clients that you don't want to continue with because that relationship isn't working, and you don't want to indefinitely adapt yourself to something that's not a natural style, that you have left yourself the means to say, hey, maybe this client isn't a good fit. Because I find overall, like, for firms to really get good transitions, you basically have to line up across 3 dimensions. You need some alignment in like your planning service philosophy, how you do planning, how clients should be served. If you're at least AUM model or AUM related, like, you have to align on investment philosophy. Whatever it is, there's not one that's right or wrong, but if yours is polar opposite different than the person you're acquiring from, that usually doesn't go well. And you need some similarity in communication and relationship style, or you tend to get some friction. And you can navigate some of those differences with some clients, but it navigates smoother when you're more aligned. And so not everybody can find like the perfect match. That's why if you're going to do a deal where it's maybe not the perfect match, there's some contingencies in how the deal is structured so that you're not stuck on the hook with people that you find you really don't want to work with in the long run.
That's really interesting to me. I want to make sure we save some time to talk about what would happen if Michael bought Carl's clients. But I am curious about, there's part of me that just doesn't want to buy that whole, I'm like, give me, like, bring it, like, I'd love the challenge. Because at the end of the day, I don't believe, I don't believe that there's like some sort of archetype engineer. Now, listen, I am almost always wrong. I'm just never in doubt. So what I'm about to say is like, I haven't even thought it through, but it's just a sense I have that I want to just say it and see what happens. I'm just not sure that, even as I'm saying it, I know I'm wrong because I've had conversations with a few people, but for the most part,
you really don't think there's an engineer archetype?
no. For the most part, I'm what I'm hope that we're pointing at is humans. And even the most data-driven, robotic, like just paint the most engineer, like deeply stereotypical engineering sort of driven person. I love the idea of having the challenge, unless they're just, I won't use any farm language on our podcast, but unless they're just people, like miserable people.
Yeah.
I would love the challenge of being like, what's it all for? Like, what are you doing this for? Why? Like, I would love the challenge
I
of
hear you
I can do that. I
until
can make you cry.
I hear you until, like, okay, there's doing the challenge, and then there's doing the challenge with 2x revenue or 3x
Yeah,
revenue dead
fine,
up to
fine,
your eyeballs.
fine. It's not what I would prefer,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, like, I just wondered as you were talking, I was like, wait, are we? like behavioral finance, values, purpose, these feel like human things, not, you know, one human. Now we feel differently about them, but if I can make you cry, then like
Wait,
I'm
wait,
just
wait.
trying to get you to respond to that. I said it earlier and you just went right past it. If
Wait,
I all I mean is I think because this okay, tell me this. How is this different? I think it is. So I'm asking for clarification. From what I heard for the year I was in London, we don't we don't talk about such things in London, right? Like this feeling, this purpose
oh,
thing, like the UK, like we just fold our arms and we don't. I heard, guess what I heard in New Zealand? We don't talk about such things in New Zealand. Guess what I heard in Wisconsin? We don't talk about such things in Wisconsin. Like I think these are human, like purpose, sense of purpose and contribution and
I,
values. And
I,
are you just saying, well, yeah, some people are interested in talking about them and some people aren't?
yes, and or some people are at a stage in their financial and life journey where they're ready to navigate that conversation and that
Hmm.
stage
Hmm.
of life, and
That's
others
fair.
are not. So it's one thing to say, I'm going to hang my shingle around a firm that has those conversations and take anyone who comes in, and I'm going to take a crack at a engineer stereotype that comes in, but they came to my doorstep, so apparently they're interested in something, and start that conversation. I feel like it's in a different context when
Mm. Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
no, 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 I'm acquiring Michael's practice as Luke in this example, and
Fair enough.
I'm getting a block of clients who didn't choose me. I'm going to
Yeah. Yeah.
get them to choose me by the end of the conversation. But like, they didn't choose me. They chose Michael, and I'm not Michael, and I'm different than Michael.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to win them over. And
Yeah. Fair enough.
I
For
do feel
sure.
like that sets somewhat of a different context. Although at the same time, like this reminds me, so I an advisor friend that went through a version of this years ago. So his wasn't the communication style shift. His was the I'm a really planning centric advisor that's buying out a very investment centric
Hmm.
book.
Hmm.
And it was basically the like, how do I get the clients away from the investment reports
Hmm. Hmm.
that they've been getting beautifully printed at everything? I mean, I think his was literally like the old advisor sends them investment reports, and I literally don't have any software to do that. He's like, I
Right.
don't
Right.
own performance
Right.
reporting software, and so part of me was saying like that's a very bold choice of an acquisition to buy
Right.
that person's
Right.
book, but you be you. Uh, but what he did, this advisor's name was Brad. Brad just went into every meeting when they started out, and he just said, look, as we start to work together, help me understand what your expectations are and how you would like our working relationship to work. I know you did certain things with prior advisor. I don't remember his name. I know you did certain things with prior advisor. Maybe you loved all the things that he did. Maybe you actually wish he did some things different, but this is an opportunity for us to reset as we start working together in a new relationship.
Hmm.
How would you like this to work?
Yeah.
And he
Love that.
just let them start saying it, and got like some people that just said, I'm here for investments and performance, and this is what I expect, because that was the book that he bought into. Uh and then he found, in his words, a shocking number that just outright said, Michael, that wasn't Michael. I forget, old advisor, like bring brings all these reports, and we don't really care about them. Like, we just want to know
Right.
how we're doing. Can you tone down the investment speak? And he basically found that a bunch of the former clients, the old advisor was just talking over their head on investments. Like they trusted him because they left the money with him, but they didn't actually value the investment talk and reports that he was giving them. And a
That's a
whole of them were
shocker.
totally fine that the reports went away. They basically just came down to the infamous one that we've all experienced at some point, which is most clients just basically want to know that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
started just asking them, like,
I
I know
love that
you worked with
idea.
your prior advisor in a certain way, what would you like our working relationship to be? What are your expectations? And just let them clarify. And then you can decide whether you want to change any of those expectations depending on what they say.
Yeah, I love that. And even like, what have you liked? What have you not liked? What could improve? Like all that, all those conversations. That's
Yeah,
really
and
nice.
like nothing negative
So
the prior, just saying, hey, this is a
chance for
new relationship opportunity as we begin working together. And I want to start off on a great foot doing what's most meaningful for you. So just tell me like what's most meaningful for you. How would you like our working relationship to be?
love that.
Well, very
Now everybody's dying to know what would happen if you bought Carl's clients.
oh
You want some rigor? Like, I'll show you a spreadsheet. I mean, that guy. What
I
did he make all his feelings with it during yoga? Like I don't have any crystals. All right.
so I ironically I'm slightly torn by this only because the way I would show up to this now is probably different than the way I would show up to this 10 or 15 years ago in my career because I still love my numbers, but I lived more in my spreadsheets then than I do now. I think probably the biggest distinction is back then I said, tell me your goals and I'll do the analysis and make a plan for you. And now I say, well, I probably will literally say it this way, but like, now I say, tell me your goals, and then say, I don't believe you. Now tell me why those are your goals and where they came from, and let's have more of a conversation because I want to get to what your real goals are because I don't actually believe that the first version of your goals are really your goals. Because now I've done it long enough to have clients that said what their goals were, and then we helped them achieve those goals, and then they weren't happy when they got there, and they made new goals. And so I fundamentally distrust clients' first statements of their goals at this point, which means I have to have more of a conversation before I get to the spreadsheety stuff. But I mean, I think what that means is, look, I'm going to have some of these purpose kinds of conversations because I want to get to my version of what are your goals? You want to retire at 65. Okay, why 65? Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? What do you want that to look like, really? If I could show you a way to get there on a different timeline, would that be of interest to you? And then when we get to some goals that I believe are goals, like I'm still going to go back and do my analysis and I'm still going to come with some numbers. Again, the tools and tech have changed. Like now I'm probably putting it up on the screen and we're looking at it a little bit more collaboratively, which to be fair is more engaging than when I used to print like 57 pages out of Money Tree and put it in front of them as I did many years ago. So, I'm still bringing numbers because I don't think I can get away from that. I think I've gotten better at presenting them in a way that's more engaging to the conversation, right? To me, like
do you hold on? Do you think I'm not bringing numbers? Bro, I got numbers.
You give them
I'm
after
getting a t-shirt. I'm getting
you
a t-shirt that says that, bro. I got numbers.
you want to give them the numbers after the meeting. I want to put the numbers in the middle of the meeting.
Okay. That's what I'm
I
pointing
mean,
at.
just
Is I think
because to me
it's much closer. It's much closer than I think.
it's the conversation piece. I
The
want to be
numbers
able to
are
look at numbers
the
to be able to
thing.
talk about. So if I move this number here, what does that mean?
Uh, uh,
But I need numbers, and I can't have that
uh,
conversation if I know that the number is not sound because then I'm going to be all
okay.
up in my head. So it has to be a sound.
Okay. Now I got it. You got to have something to anchor the discussion around. And for you,
Yes,
that's numbers.
yes, or
Okay.
charts or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. So fun, bro. I got
All right.
numbers
All right, you got number. We have to make that a T-shirt for you now.
for sure.
All right.
For sure.
Thank you, Carl.
Cheers, Michael.